Today I want to share with you some of the mistakes I've made in the past 5 years as a freelance web designer. In the beginning of my freelancing career, I had a lot of uncertainty. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just figuring it out as I went, and because of that, a lot of mistakes were made. There's not really a framework on how to do this, like on how to be a freelancer. You kind of just have to make mistakes and learn from them as you go. I do still have some uncertainty in my business, but I think I have a lot more things figured out than I did a few years ago. So I kind of wanted to come on here and just share some of the mistakes that I've made in the past 5 years to hopefully help out others who are in similar situations, who are maybe just getting started with their freelancing business. Maybe you can learn from my mistakes a little bit. So the first mistake I want to share with you is taking on too many clients at once. In other words, not scheduling projects properly. When I first started working as a freelancer, I didn't want to turn anyone away. I just kind of wanted to take as much work as I could, which I think a lot of us have that same experience as new freelancers. That kind of thinking doesn't scale. In the beginning, I wasn't really getting a lot of clients, so I didn't really have this problem. It was only in the past like maybe 3 years that I started to have a little bit more work come in, luckily. I've fixed this mistake only recently by figuring out how long a project is going to take me. I have a project estimator spreadsheet and I estimate how long each one is going to take me. And from that, I know what my availability is. So when somebody comes to me and tells me that they're interested in hiring me for designing their website, I'll tell them when my next availability is. This is something that I didn't even used to do. I was just like, yeah, let's get started right away, even if I was already working on 2 projects. I think it does take a little bit of time to figure out how long a project is going to take you and to properly estimate that. I suggest that you use a time tracker to figure out how long different tasks are taking you. So that way when you're estimating how long the entire project is going to take you, it's just as simple as like, oh, okay, well, this task in the past has taken me about 5 hours, and then you just like add them all up and you see how long it's going to take. Those are all things that you kind of like learn along the way, like how to get better at estimating. Definitely recommend not overlapping your client projects. That's like a quick recipe for burnout. The next mistake that I want to share is neglecting my business goals or not having time to work on my other business goals. There's a lot of stuff that goes into your business that's not just working on the actual web design stuff or whatever it is that you do, photography, whatever it is. There's like other stuff that you have to work on too. You may have other business goals. You may want to start a YouTube channel or market yourself in other ways. One of my business goals is to create website templates, which would give people the ability to access my designs without having to pay the higher price point of hiring me to do their own custom website. This has been a goal of mine for the past like several years, and I've just never given myself the time to sit down and work on this business, like work on making the templates and setting up the shop and all of that stuff. If you fill up all of your time with customer work, you're not going to be able to have time to work on your actual business or to work on other business goals. I guess that kind of goes in with the first mistake. If you don't overlap your clients and fill up your schedule with as much client work as you can, you'll have time to work on your business. And you can also schedule it so that in between client projects, you give yourself like a week or 2 weeks so that it's not just client work, like you're also giving yourself time to work on your other stuff. Again, like in the beginning, I just felt like I had to take on as much work as I could because I had this like scarcity mindset, this fear that I wasn't gonna have enough client work to pay the bills, to pay my rent. This kind of ties into the next mistake, which is undercharging, undervaluing yourself. I'm afraid if I charge more, I'm not gonna get any clients. That's something that I'm still working on, but I think in the beginning it was a lot worse. Actually, if you watched my last video, which was about how I became a freelancer, I mentioned briefly in that video that I think it's okay to undercharge at first, when you're first getting started, when you're really just dipping your toes and trying to figure out what you're doing, you have no experience, you don't know what you're doing. At that point, I feel like it's okay to undercharge because you can't charge what everyone else is charging when you've never done it before. You're gonna probably make a lot of mistakes. You're just figuring things out, It's a very fine line though. Like after the first couple of projects, you should start charging a little bit more. I think that it took me way too long to up my prices. The way that I calculate my fee for a project is, so this comes after I have already met with the client. I know the entire scope of work, everything they want. So I'm able to like put it in my little estimator spreadsheet, figure out how long each task is going to take me, add up all the hours. Okay, so then I take that and multiply it by an hourly rate that I have in my head. And this hourly rate used to be so low. Like I was charging such a small amount when I first got got started, and I didn't increase that until I quit my job like a year and a half ago. Even now, it is still low compared to other web design, like freelance web designers. I don't want you to think that I have it all figured out. I think I still undercharge, and I still need to work on valuing myself more and charging closer to what I'm worth. I think it's also just like kind of a self-esteem thing, like realizing that I have a lot to offer people. This is still an ongoing process for me. Getting back to my other mistakes, if I charge closer to what I'm worth, then I wouldn't have as much of a scarcity mindset. I wouldn't have as much fear over like having to grab as much work as I can and take on as many clients as I can if I was charging enough to pay the rent. I just dyed my hair orange a couple days ago and it turned out red. As you can see, it's a little bit red. It'll fade to orange, don't worry. That's what I'm telling myself. The next mistake is not having a clear onboarding process and a good way of communicating with the client throughout the project. That's a long one. I'm putting different issues into one. Just a lack of clarity and communication and a general lack of process. In the first few years of freelancing, I didn't really know what I was doing, and I would just kind of jump right into projects without establishing like the clear project scope. I didn't even have clients sign a contract in the beginning. Like that was a huge mistake. You must have a contract that states clearly the scope of work, what will happen if they add more work to the scope, that you charge extra for that. Also, what would happen if they just ghost you without paying you. These are things that you need to have in place to protect yourself. In the beginning, I didn't really have any kind of onboarding process with my clients. I just kind of would jump right into the work after the initial call. Nowadays, in the very beginning when I'm on the call with them, I'll tell them what to expect. I'll tell them like, after this call, I'm going to estimate how long this project is going to take me, and then I'm going to, from that, figure out how much I'm going to charge. Then I'm going to put together a contract, and I'll put together a dashboard, and I tell them like step by step, this is what to expect. And I think giving them that clarity in the beginning puts them so much more at ease. And then I also put together a project portal in Notion. And this project portal has all of the tasks that I'm working on. I'm able to like go in and change the status of each of these tasks. The timeline view kind of shows all of the tasks on a calendar view, sort of, so you can see like when the project's going to be completed. There's also a section in the project portal for a list of tasks that I ask of them so that they can kind of like know what I need from them. And then there's a list of important links. I have a link to the Google Drive, which acts as like the project file hub, where they can upload all the photos and videos that they want to use on the website. And I can also put the contract there and other deliverables like logos. So I have all of this in a dashboard in Notion, and I know a lot of people will not want to create a Notion account to go in and see this. So there's an option in the premium version of Notion where you can publish a page on the internet, like as if it were a website. So the customer can just view it in any web browser. At least that's the theory. I don't know if it's actually being used. My most recent client used Notion dashboard a lot, so that was nice. I have had clients in the past that didn't use it at all, which is fine. I just think that it's good to have it all in one spot, give them the option to use it. It's not just for them, it's also for me to keep everything related to the project kind of in one central dashboard. There's also the issue of communication with clients. And this is something that I am still working on to this day. I think I've gotten a lot better at it, but there is a client that I was working with earlier this year that really taught me a lot. This is one of my most difficult clients that I had worked with. It's a long story that I don't want to get into here, but lack of communication was one of the biggest issues with this client. I wasn't really good at following up with clients in the beginning. When I would send them an email requesting something from them and I didn't hear back from them for several days, I was like too afraid to send them another email because I didn't want to seem like I was like nagging them or like being like bothering them in any way. So I would just kind of like let it hang there. But then there's sometimes when you like actually need something in order for the project to keep moving forward. I think it's a good idea to have at least every week a check-in email at the end or beginning of the week, kind of telling them where you're at with the project, what you need from them, and also when you don't hear back from them, checking in with them or following up with them. So yeah, not communicating enough, and also having like a lack of clarity of the whole project, what's going on with the project, and like the scope of work. These are all kind of like the same issue, which is just like figuring out how to properly communicate to your client and like being clear on the expectations. The next mistake I want to talk about is failing to set boundaries on the scope of work. Specifically, the way this mistake has shown up the most for me is with logo design. One client in particular I've really had this issue with. It's the same client that I had talked about before that I had communication issues with. So getting started on the logo, I had a very vague idea of what she wanted, which is the first problem. The issue was that I did not set a clear number of revisions in the contract. So I just kind of gave her open-ended access to keep asking for changes on the logo. It's very hard to capture the identity of a brand. This is what's going to represent their business. So obviously they're going to be picky about the way it looks. With this particular client, she just kept coming back and telling me like, oh, I don't know, it's just not quite there yet. I don't think this is it. She just like wouldn't really give me specific feedback. I was really trying to work with this client. I just have all of this fear surrounding like not making my clients happy. So I just kept giving her more and more of my time because I didn't specify in the contract that you only get 2 revisions on the logo. That's definitely a lesson I learned, is to clearly state the scope of work for the project in the contract and in the initial emails. If the scope is starting to creep a little bit, if they're asking for more than was in the initial scope, then it's well within reason to let them know like this is out of scope and it's gonna cost extra if you want me to do this extra work, which it's fine if you want to do that. It's gonna probably extend the timeline of the project, and it's also going to cost a little bit more. So I've already mentioned a lot about this one particular client that was difficult to work with, to say the least. That leads me to my last mistake that I want to share with you, which is not having a strong client vetting process. In the beginning, like I mentioned before, I took on as much work as I could. I said yes to every client that came my way. The reality is not every client is going to be a good fit. They might be too demanding. They might have unclear expectations. They might have a low budget. It might be hard to judge a person in the beginning and know whether it's going to be a difficult client. But if you're seeing some red flags, don't ignore them. You don't have to take on every client that comes your way. That is a lesson that I have only learned in the past year. Working with difficult clients can drain your energy and also take away time that you could be spending working with better clients. I think it's better to turn down a bad client and go a period of time without having any client work. You could spend that time working on other things, like maybe working on your own website, figuring out how to market yourself, and wait for a better client to come around. I think that if I continued to accept difficult clients, it would lead me to not enjoy the work anymore, and I would probably quit freelancing. Those types of clients bring on a lot of unnecessary stress into your life. My fix for this mistake of just taking on every client that comes my way is to have a strong vetting process. First of all, usually what happens these days is a client will contact me via my form on my website. One of the questions I have on there is their budget. So when that form comes to my email and I see that their budget is $500 to create like an entire new website from scratch, as well as branding services, I immediately am like, okay, this is probably not a good client for me. But if they make it past that initial filter, then I will respond and ask more questions from them before I jump on a call. So I go back and forth via email to try to like suss out what they want from the project and if they're gonna be easy to work with and if their budget is reasonable. I try to get as much of that vetted before I jump on a call with them. Usually from that information that I get from them in the initial emails, I can make the call on whether I think that they would be a good fit. And if so, I will schedule a call to get more information from them about the project. Yeah, I think that's it. I feel like there's so many more mistakes I've made, but these are the only ones that I've written down to talk about. I hope that was helpful for you. If you are a freelancer, let me know in the comments what your biggest mistakes have been and what lessons you have learned. And if you are thinking about becoming a freelancer, let me know in the comments what you want to get into, like what kind of freelancing are you interested in. I love connecting with you guys in the comments and like learning more about your stories and what you're doing in life. And I feel like a lot of those stories are inspiring to me. So yeah, share with me in the comments, please. If you found this video helpful at all, please give it a like. And if not, I'm sorry, I did my best. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.